Welcome to Motortrade Radio.com, the internet radio show for the global automotive industry.
Supporting BEN, the automotive industry's charity.
Radar Video have partnered with Sky TV to enable you to promote your independent or franchise car dealership locally. We help you attract more targeted car buyers on both Sky TV's affordable AdSmart platform and Facebook's powerful local ad system. To command more leads, inquiries and test drive requests locally, call 0800 998 9848 or visit radarvideo.co.uk today.
If you want to attract more customers, maximise retention and increase profitability, apply to join the WMS Group's exclusive Safe and Sound network, as endorsed by Sir Sterling Moss. Search for WMS Group to find out more. To receive our free newsletter, sign up today at www.motortraderadio.com.
Hi and welcome to today's episode of Motortrade Radio.com, and I'm delighted to welcome Simon and Caroline Shield of Simon Shield Cars in Ipswich. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello.
This is a first for us. We've never had a three-way conversation on the show before, so congratulations. You've made a first out of 90 episodes.
Oh, yay!
Claim to fame. So how's business, guys? How's things just now?
A little patchy at the moment. I think we could be doing more. I think it certainly hasn't got off to a big start in 2016. We had a good run up to Christmas, to be fair. We had a bit going on then. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a bit patchy at the moment is how I'll describe it. But it'll pick up. It always does. But yeah, right at the moment, a little bit patchy.
So is that 20 years you've been in business?
It is 20 years. Yeah.
20
years.
We
we started in. It would have been April 96. We were a few months in one place, and then we've been in our current garage for, it'll be 20 years in September this year, in fact, at the current garage. So, sort of well established.
So how would you describe your business? What's the makeup of the garage?
Well, basically what we've got, the garage is it's a site which is owned by the guy who runs the workshop. So the site is made up of a forecourt and an office which we use. We built a new office a few years ago, so we've got a forecourt where we can carry up to about 25 cars, so we're very small. Workshops next door, owned by the guy who owns the whole site, so he does, he's got about 8 bays, 2 MOT bays, full workshop facilities, which is really convenient for us because it's only me and Caroline in the business, so we can get all our service work, prep work, MOT work done on site. The only thing we have to leave the site for generally is bodywork. Mm-hmm.
And it's great you don't have to absorb that overhead either.
No, that's right. I mean, it works really well. The premise is Mark, who owns the site, doesn't want to sell cars and we don't want to fix them. Mm-hmm. So, on that basis, we've got 2 businesses which work well together.
Great. So what sort of cars do you have, and do you get a lot of repeat business? Is it the same sort of customers that keep coming back to you? We
do quite a bit of repeat business. I mean, I think... the days of a huge amount of repeat business, I think, are gone. I mean, that sort of loyalty seems to have disappeared with the emergence of the internet. I mean, people travel far and wide. Rather than coming back to you for what you've got, they will travel to Manchester for one because it happens to be the right colour, right spec, and so on and so on. So, there's less repeat business about as opposed to pre-internet, but we do a lot. We rely heavily on our reputation because we prefer to do as much local business as we can. We're in a rural area, and we would like to see more and more people back locally. But it's amazing how people just spread out, and loyalty it's not a thing of the past, but it's certainly a thing that takes a lot more work to pull people back in now.
Yeah, very much so. A friend of mine who's got a garage, he's been going 35 years, and he was saying that a customer of his that had bought dozens of cars over the years came in a couple of months ago and said, "I'm here to see the Focus." And he thought, "Yeah, done deal." And he says, "Yeah, I've only got another 7 to see." So you're absolutely right. Those days seem to be evaporating.
The internet's allowed people to be incredibly specific about what they wanted. I mean, years ago, somebody would come in and say, well, I'm looking for the Focus, for instance. I'm really looking for a blue one, and you might happen to have a green one. And because you were local and they were local, and it was difficult to travel outside of the area, they would compromise and buy the car that you had got. Mm-hmm. What happens now is, of course, they can say, no, I won't have the green one that you've got. I will find a blue one, and they'll travel a couple of 100 miles to find the exact car that they want.
Absolutely. Yeah. Has this made people much more informed as well?
Yeah, it has. Although, yeah, it has made people a lot more informed. They've got a lot more information, but all that appears on the internet isn't always as it seems.
Absolutely true. And what sort of stock profile do you carry?
Generally, we're retailing cars between about £5,000 and about £15,000. Although that does vary, we're quite happy to step outside the box every now and then for something unusual. We do like slightly unusual, not really unusual cars, but slightly different cars because we're in a rural setting. Lines of Focuses and Mondeos won't sell for us unless they're cheap, because people will find their way to their local town or whatever, and they'll buy one there. So generally £5,000 to £15,000, but I'm not afraid of retailing older stock, things that we take in part exchange, which are nice. The old horrors we'll always get rid of, but something that comes in, which is really nice, then I'm quite happy to retail that again, because it's only Caroline and myself in the business. We can be very specific about how we retail a car. It's not like handing a car to a salesman who says, well, we've got parameters, that's what we're going to do. We can be flexible, very flexible. So we can have something really old, but if it's really nice, we can retail it in a way that perhaps we wouldn't do with something newer.
Yeah, if you've got the confidence in the vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you get your start in the industry?
Back in the dim and distant, I believe black and white TVs were still back in those days. 1983, December, I started working for a Peugeot. Well, they were Peugeot and Talbot in those days.
Remember that.
How old you are, Derek, but anyway.
I vaguely remember Talbot Sambas from the top of the
well, in fact, there's a tale, you see. The very first car I ever sold went out 1st of January 1984, and it was an A-Reg Talbot Samba 1.1 LE in blue. And it was A704 HBJ.
There you go.
That's that. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I think sort of 35 years ago, the first car I sold.
And I got involved in the business when I married Simon, really. When we set it up in 1996, I carried on working for other local companies and did all the bookwork and paperwork behind the scenes, and then came into it sort of full-time 2001.
Yeah, it would have been around about then. You've created yourself a niche in the business, because basically what Caroline does is a lot of the stuff I either don't want to do or I'm not capable of doing. Right. The technology side of things and the social media side of things, number one, it doesn't really interest me, and number two, I actually don't know how to do it, is the honest truth. So I'm actually quite good at the hands-on stuff of buying and selling cars is what I do. And Caroline is very good at the other side of the business. So actually it works quite well. She does what she does, and she does, and I do what I do. And
marriage made in heaven. Team made in heaven.
Yeah, yes, most of the time. Not always, but yeah, most of the time. We work in different ways, but yeah, it works pretty well. So
how did you come from selling Peugeot and Talbot in 83 to opening your own place 13 years later?
From 1983, I worked for a small family group, did Peugeot, Talbot. I then went, within that group, I spent a bit of time, they had Fiat as well. I did a bit of Fiat, I did a bit of Toyota they had at the time. And then in 1986, I moved to, that was Stowmarket near Ipswich here. And then I got a job with a BMW garage in Norwich. Mm-hmm. And I was there from 86, well, off and on, 86 through till about 1990. But I had a break I went travelling in that time, so I had a bit of a break from it. But essentially, I was in the business for the whole of the time.
Caroline regrets a bit joining the industry?
No, not at all. It's kind of opened my eyes to working in a very male environment. Then I did come from very male environments before. I worked for printing companies and in the NHS and various places. So. And before I started really working for Simon, I worked for a big retail company. So I was quite aware of people and retail.
What would you guys say was your worst showroom moment from memory?
There are various ones. I went back to work for the family group I worked for before. In 1991, they launched a thing called the Mitsubishi Sigma. Now, if anybody can remember that, it was what was it? It never took off anyway.
It was like Mondeo size from memory.
Well, they did an estate version and a saloon version. The estate version was built in Australia, of all the strange places to build one. Anyway, but the saloon version was a very upmarket sort of 3-litre V6. Anyway, they delivered one to us, and we parked it, cleaned it all up, and parked it in the showroom. Lovely. And it was an expensive car in its day. And anyway, in the middle of the showroom there was a big sort of concrete post, which presumably held the roof up, I suppose. Anyway, we were always avoiding this, moving cars around the showroom, and it was all part. You could get sort of 6 or 7 cars in the showroom. I was moving this thing around in the showroom, and the phone rang, and the phones in those days, you didn't have a phone in your pocket, it was still on the end of a wire, and of course it was in my office. So I hopped out of the car, and what I didn't do, it was an automatic, and as I hopped out of the car, I hadn't actually selected neutral or park. So I set off across the showroom, picked the phone up, facing away from the car, and I turned round with the phone in my hand to see the car reversing backwards across the showroom, and the door I'd left open. So it caught the door on the post in the middle of the showroom, and before I could get back to it, it bent it back the wrong way. So I sort of like folded it back against the front wing before I could get to it. It was a big old 3-litre engine, this thing, so it just kept chonking away across the showroom floor. So that wasn't one of my finest moments, I have to say.
Expensive repair.
Yeah, it was a bit, yeah.
And then your best moment, what would you say your best moment's been?
I don't know. I suppose it depends. Yeah, I mean, I've had some very happy times in showrooms. I mean, we've had a lot of fun. You know, it depends whether it's business or pleasure. We've had, you know, back in the day, the new car showroom was quite a vibrant place to be, and I have to say, with all due respect to the way new cars are sold now, I find every time I go in a new car showroom now, I find it a soulless place. And I don't think the characters are in the business anymore, and I don't think the fun is there to be had in the job. Seems to be a huge amount of pressure on the guys, and they're staring at computers all day rather than jumping up and down, actually being themselves is probably a way of describing it. It seems to be bred out of new car dealerships to be yourself anymore. You have to be this sort of automated machine now. But I think, yeah, I mean, good times in the showroom. I've had some great deals in the past. I've had a lot of fun with people. I think probably some of the best times have been some of the people that I've met over the years. They make the job. It's not all about the money. You know, they make the job interesting. If you've met some interesting people who've got a story, they're the things that stick in your mind, I think.
The way you run your business, you obviously use social media, your operations. What activities do you do to generate business through social media?
We use Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Google Plus, and it is a very vibrant place. There's lots of us on there, and I know you've spoken to Alexis, Christy Diesels and Jim Reed and Umesh, and there's lots of dealers on there, and actually we wouldn't have come across them if it wasn't for social media.
That's very true.
And also customers as well. Customers are constantly looking at us and seeing what we are doing on social media. We buy quite a number of cars off Facebook, haven't we?
I think we've had more success currently, as it stands at the moment. We've had more success, direct success. We've bought a few cars via social media. It's very difficult to quantify social media as a direct sales tool. I mean, Caroline's now getting into doing specifically selling via Facebook, which is a very tricky business, which I don't understand at all, but Caroline does. But we can attribute purchases to social media. It's very, very difficult to attribute sales at the moment to social media. I think that I see it fairly simply, and I think that people out of area, again, it's an internet related thing, out of area, somebody's seen your car who lives a long way from you, before they travel or even pick the phone up to talk to you, they want to know a bit more about what you're all about. And if they can find you in a whole load of different places, they get a feel for what you're all about before they...
And there's a lot of trust that comes about from that.
I think there is, yeah. Testimonials, recommendations, that sort of thing make a lot of difference. They've got an idea of what you're all about. Because at the end of the day, we're selling a used product.
Yeah.
You know, and there's got to be an element of trust in that, a big element of trust before somebody will actually part with their money.
Yeah. I've been watching a couple of your videos today. There was one for a Ford Kuga and another one for a Mazda. How are you getting on with doing your own videos for the cars?
Well, we've sort of had a go with this and that. I mean, I know Jim Reed does a lot of these drive videos, and we thought we'd have a go with it. I don't know. We've asked customers about what they think about it, and it's kind of difficult to get over. The drive seems like a good idea, and I think it gives people an idea of what we're all about. But it's incredibly difficult to pass on to somebody how a car drives.
Sure.
We've done sort of quick walk rounds with video. We've done longer walk rounds with video. I quite like the drive thing, but I'm not totally convinced that is actually. I mean, people will watch anything, won't they? Let's face it. If you give people the opportunity, they'll sit and if they're looking to buy a product, the more you put on there, the better.
Yeah.
Clearly, but how much of it is actually working is very, very difficult.
It's interesting to see how different companies or different garages are implementing this, because it's something that's working for greatly, as you said, Jim, but for others it's just not gaining traction, unfortunately.
If it's done well, it's brilliant. If it's done badly, you can do more harm than good. I mean, a friend of mine recently bought a virtually brand new BMW, and it was an expensive car, it was sort of £35,000 car, and I saw the video. Now, you've inquired after the car, so you've sent an email inquiring after the car, or you have phoned in. Yeah. And they sent this video. Well, to be honest, it was diabolical.
Better off not bothering.
You couldn't see it properly. It was poorly done. And he just thought, you know what, you've done yourself no good at all. You're better off not doing that. Yeah. So,
you know what it reminds me of is cinema advertising in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know how bad some of the local advertising was.
Yes.
If you go back to those times.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. It's got to be done. It's got to be done properly.
Mm-hmm. My biggest bugbear about those reactive videos is that you've got flagpoles creaking in the background, and you've got wind noise, and you've got guys who aren't comfortable holding the camera, and you know, it's just, you're right. They'd be better off not bothering.
They've got to be done well.
Yeah, we're sort of experimenting with it still, aren't we? We've done some funny videos as well, and sort of we're just sort of working out what the best thing to do really.
I think the best thing to do is to try and be individual. And the way to be individual is actually put a slant on it. And I think you know, making something funny shows not only it shows the car off a bit, but I don't think it's all about showing off the car. I think it's about showing that you're real people. I think that you're normal. You are. You know, you're sort of like what we might call a traditional old sort of camel coat, trilby hat car dealer. You're actually, you know, you're normal
human beings.
And showing that you've got a bit of a sense of humour is a really good thing. I think people like that, and I think they want to see that you're realistic.
Actually, when I had my garage a few years ago, I used to put a lot of humour in the newspaper adverts that we put out. So much so got reported to the Advertising Standards Authority, and the adverts got pulled because they were just that little bit risque. But you wouldn't believe the amount of people that bought cars because there was that element of humour in there. Not that the local newspaper had any humour, neither did the Advertising Standards Authority, but you know, a lot of people bought from the garage because it was perceived to be a fun place to go.
Yeah, I think there's still quite a big element of that goes on. I know a particular quite big but low price used car dealer who employs that now. Back in the 80s, there was loads of that. There was a guy who used to have a Mitsubishi garage when I was doing Mitsubishi. He was over near Lakenheath, Milden, or Bury St Edmunds way. He used to deal with a lot of the Americans over there. And some of the things he used to get up to, I mean, he used to have this pair of like dummy legs, and they were always in the showroom underneath the car, and it looked like somebody had been run over. But they stuck out every time you went in there. There was this pair of legs sticking out from under a car in your showroom, and it was just a talking point. Everybody knew they were there.
Exactly, that's a talking point.
That's great. That sort of thing should be encouraged. But can you imagine today walking into a new car dealership of any sort and seeing any form of humour?
That's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
Too scared to offend people.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I think that it's the corporate world that new car manufacturers want. They've created it, they want it, but it's very sterile.
Yeah, it's a clinical environment.
Yeah, I don't like it.
So, what would you guys say is your biggest strengths as garage owners?
I think it's actually our size, which is probably our strength. The fact that we're so small and we're so individual. I think that's a big benefit. I think people if people ring us up, they only ever speak to Caroline or myself. There is nobody else. There's nobody to go and ask. There's no sort of structure of management. Oh, I'll just have to go and talk to the manager about that. There's none of that. We've got it's a very direct line, and I think people like that. You know, if you compare that with the other end of the spectrum, which is your car supermarket, where it's almost like people are processed rather than actually dealt with, and I think people really like that. And I think that's probably our strength is our size, actually.
And they're dealing with a decision maker.
Yeah, we're small enough to be ideal, and because of that, with only a small number of cars, the background to, you know, I know where every one of those cars has come from. Sure. Yeah, and I think people want to know everything they can about a car before they buy it.
Yeah. Now, again, that brings the trust through as well.
Yeah.
So, on the back of that, what would you say is your biggest weakness as garage owners?
You may put that, you could probably actually say exactly the same thing as a weakness as size as well, because what it does mean that when somebody comes to us and one of our old customers, for instance, who's bought a car, wants to buy a car from us again, and we only have 20 to 25 cars in stock, and they want a sky blue pink BMW 1 Series, we're not going to have one.
No.
And getting hold of that car is very, very difficult. You know, the challenges of buying cars now are harder than the challenges of selling them. And so I think the size is almost there's a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of downsides with the size as well. We can't serve all our old customers because we can't find those cars. You can't just go and find that car now.
Yeah, and like you used to be able to. So what would you say is exciting you about your business just now, getting you really fired up about it?
I think, what's getting us fired up at the moment? I mean, from Caroline's point of view, it's probably her. I mean, Caroline's really fired up with the social media thing. I think that's the new big thing for us. I mean, the process of buying and selling cars doesn't really change much. We have to tweak it. We have to go with the times, but probably. Caroline will answer that question. Yeah. Really, I think it is the social media side of things, the way that we have to market, the way that we're marketing cars now.
It certainly is. I think it's, and I think it will become even more relevant as the years go on, as younger generation come up. It's all they do. They're always on their phone. You know, mobile is so relevant, making sure that your ads are mobile-friendly, mobile-responsive website. We're constantly changing our website. Finance, everybody talks finance. When we first started out, it was all finance, and then it slipped away, and now it's all back again. So it's constantly moving and shifting and keeping up with what's going on out there, really.
Absolutely. And what was it that was holding you guys back from becoming your own bosses?
I think if I turn the clock back to when we started on our own in 1996, I wasn't one of these people who always wanted to work for myself. It kind of just happened because the job I had at the time, I was sales manager at the time. They wanted somebody to run the whole garage as a general manager, which I'd have been quite happy to do. That I wanted to do that job. Somebody was promoted in above my head. I didn't want that situation. As it turns out, I didn't get on with the guy that well, but as it turned out later, and we did actually get on really, really well when I'd left the garage. But I couldn't find a job that I wanted to do. There wasn't a job which I wanted, and we discussed it at the time. We didn't have our daughter. We didn't have a lot of overheads. Caroline had a good job, and so we decided to give it a go. And so it wasn't one of these things where we had a great desire to work for ourselves. It kind of just happened that way. I went into it on the basis of, look, if this doesn't work, I'll just go and get a job again. So we didn't set our goal out to actually work for ourselves. It's turned out it's worked well, but it wasn't a desire from sort of day one, as it were.
What would you say is the best deal that you've ever done?
Are we talking about financially the best deal?
Whatever regard, whatever way you want to take it.
Mitsubishi, wasn't it? The Shoguns, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think if I turn the clock back to when I worked for the Mitsubishi main dealer, there was a particular instance where this would have been about I bet it was 1991, 1992, somewhere around there. And there was a price rise that came on for Mitsubishi Shoguns at the time. They were really, really popular. You couldn't get them. You know, they were good news. And we had a guy who came in for a petrol automatic one, which they were sort of reasonably popular. And this guy worked for, I think he worked for one of the American news agencies in London. Anyway, he just rang up, and we happened to have the right car available. We sold it to him full price. You weren't really in a mind to give a lot of discount off these things, but these were the days when you had 17.5% across everything. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we sold the thing to him full up. He had just about every extra you could possibly imagine on this car. He just ticked every box. Everything went on the car. We sold it to him at the price rise price. Mm-hmm. Off he went, and then we realised afterwards this car, it was an old price car, done, and it was a huge margin. It was enormous. But, he'd paid normal price for the car. It wasn't like we'd sort of ripped him off or anything. It just happened to be that way. We looked at the sort of margin afterwards, and it was pretty phenomenal.
If you've got the car that somebody wants, will pay the price for it.
Yeah, I think so. I do. There's another occasion actually, which I remember vividly, which makes a nice tale. This is going back when I was doing BMWs. It was 1987. It was just before Christmas, 1987, and I'd booked a skiing holiday, and I hadn't really worked out how I was going to pay for it because I didn't have any money. Anyway, I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, "Well, we booked it all up. Yeah, okay, so I'll pay you." Anyway, I hung up on him, and this lady came into the showroom, and she sat down with me, and she wanted to buy a new BMW 320i. So we sat down, and in those days, you had this book. The price list was this huge book, and there was sort of 2 A4 size pages of spec for these cars, and it was tiny writing. I mean, there was a huge number of options on this car. Anyway, we sat down, and she was obviously very well to do, this lady. So we just went through it, and I sat down and went through every option, and I just went through every option. Would you like this on the car? Would you like that on the car? And I reckon we ticked 75% of those boxes on this car. It was the most expensive BMW 320i SE I think we'd ever sold. Anyway, I totted it all up. She ordered the car, left the deposit, off she went. I worked my commission out, and I rang my mate back and I said, "David, I think I've just paid for my skiing holiday."
From one deal.
So anyway, yeah.
Brilliant. What would you say is your biggest bugbear about the motor industry today?
That is probably the control which some very large companies have over what we do now.
Okay.
I think, in my opinion, that the motor trade is being controlled now by 3 big companies. Mannheim, BCA, and Autotrader. Mm-hmm. Those 3 companies have got so much control over what we do now because they've bought the WeBuyAnyCar.com companies. They've got control over so much of that. Autotrader have got so much control over how we advertise cars. And I think those would be things which I really find difficult to deal with now.
See, with your feelings like that, would that prompt you to look at alternatives to those companies if they were available? Definitely. Yeah, I think the industry's looking that way.
I mean, Autotrader, you've got to sort of separate them really. I mean, the auctions have got massive control over what we do because they're able to put a deal together with main dealer groups, big main dealer groups, because they own the We Buy Any Cars. They're feeding a lot of those cars which we used to be able to buy in part exchange directly from main dealers or privately from people. Now we don't get a look in on those cars. They go directly to auction via either the We Buy Any Cars of this world or directly to auction from the dealer groups. And of course, you can see why they do it. You know that they're getting better money for the cars, but we're controlled by having to go to them to buy the stock.
That's it, because it's almost like starvation to make you go to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very clever it's a clever way to run your business. They are able to make us go to them, and of course, as with all things in life, once they've got you have to go to them. The charges go up. Every car we buy now is dearer to buy via auction. So yeah, I think I don't like the control that they have over what we do now. I don't like that sort of feeling that the corporates, they're not running our business, but they're certainly having a big influence on it.
Yeah, it's almost like a stranglehold. How would you say that you're going to see the motor trade change in the next 10 years?
I think
there'll be a lot more online buying, that's for sure. It'll be interesting to see how that goes with used cars. But there'll definitely be a lot more people wanting to buy online.
I think, yeah, they probably will want to buy online, but is the deal ever actually going to be done until they've seen the car? You see, this is the whole thing. It's a used product. These are not new cars, and you can think you've done a deal, but you haven't done it until they've seen it.
Yeah, the money's in the bank.
That's true of independent dealers, although people will trust main dealers. I mean, they'll buy a car online from a main dealer, a used one, have it delivered, never been to the garage, pay for the thing. And I suppose that's a confidence that if there is a drama with the car, that they are confident that it will be fixed by the car or they can return it. But I think that's certainly a big, yes, I think that's right. That will come. The other thing I think, which is becoming more and more relevant, is that the big guys, the supermarkets seem to get bigger. It's all about turnover. It's small margins and high turnover.
Yeah,
something that I think in the used car business I think that will get more and more. I think that it'll become a more and more relevant thing.
Ideal. So just before we wrap things up, one last question. So imagine you've got a long weekend off. You can each answer this independently if you want. You can choose any car in the world, any companion, and any destination. What three do you choose for the perfect weekend away? And I'm dying to hear this.
I'll let Caroline go first. No, ladies first.
Wise man.
Because I've got one in mind, but I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah.
Depending on what you say, I'll might depend on what I say.
Well, of course, it's got to be with my husband. Of course. But
I might have to readjust mine a bit now.
Readjust yours now, won't you? And it would be a road trip through Europe. Probably be Aston Martin DB10. Only because of Daniel Craig, really. I'd probably have to have that vision in there somewhere.
Why don't you go with Daniel Craig?
Well, I could go with Daniel Craig. I could go with Daniel Craig, but I was just being polite, and that's because my husband's sitting next to me.
So the true answer is Europe, DB10, Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
There you go. Right, Simon, you've got
I think you've got the message there, Derek. I think that's about size. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I would do.
Okay.
I would take Brian Johnson from AC/DC.
Oh, good answer.
A really big petrol head, and I think he's one of the coolest guys in the world.
Absolutely.
I would go with him, probably in a brand new Porsche 911 of some sort. I'd want to drive down to the Porsche factory and go round with him because he's so enthusiastic about cars. Then what I'd like to do is then drive to an AC/DC concert, watch them play, have an after party with them, and then drive home. How's about that?
And if you survive, you drive home again.
Well, I might have to have a driver to bring me home. I'll drive one way and then perhaps not the other.
I've been listening to that Brian Johnson's audio book, Rockers and Rollers, I think it's called, and it is just hilarious. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's fantastic. I really got into AC/DC about 86, so yeah, a lifelong fan. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. Totally back up. Guys, that's been brilliant. Thanks very much for your time, and hopefully we'll get you back on again at some point in the future.
You're welcome.
Lovely.
Nice to talk to you.
And you guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Derek.
Bye.
To receive our free newsletter, sign up today at www.motortraderadio.com.